NOS Nitrous, a VORTECH supercharger, or a turbo from Summit Racing. Believe me, your 4.8 liter responds very well to power adders. How well? Let's find out. Hello everybody, I'm Richard Holder, and as always, welcome to the channel. Today we're looking at part 2 of our 4.8 liter power mod series. In part 1, we looked at all the naturally aspirated mods. You know, we had different headers, shorties, stock exhaust manifolds, long tubes. We had different intake manifolds, camshafts, and then heads, cam, and intake. Now it's time to take a look at the power adders. We're talking about a VORTECH supercharger, a turbo, and obviously nitrous. All of those make big power, so let's jump right in and find out how the little 4.8 liter does with boost. Okay guys, we are going to jump right in on our 4.8 liter. Please, if you have not, take a look back at part 1 where we did all the NA mods, including different style headers and cams and intake manifolds and heads, cam, and intake manifold. But now we're taking a look at power adders, and we're going to start with nitrous oxide. So we got a 4.8 liter. I know on here it says Junkyard LM7. It's not. You can tell by the torque output. But this was a stock short block, stock 706 heads. It had a pretty good size cam in it. It was a comp 54-454-11, which was a 614, 624 lift, a 227, 243 duration, and 113 degree lobe separation angle, which is pretty good size actually for a 4.8 liter. You can see this thing was making power all the way out at 7,000 RPM. We ran this thing carbureted, and the other turbo and blower stuff that we're going to be doing will be running it fuel injected. But we ran this thing carbureted, and then we put a simple Sniper NOS like nitrous kit on it, so it worked pretty well. So we ran this thing with an Edelbrock Victor Jr. single plane intake manifold. Again, in my opinion, not the ideal choice for a 4.8 liter. I think I would be much rather have a dual plane like an RPM or one of the Holley versions of the dual plane. We ran a 650 Brawler on this, 1 7/8 headers, which worked pretty well. And we jetted the thing and ran the MSD ignition controller where we could adjust the timing. This thing ran best with 31 to 32 degrees indicated total timing, which is a couple of degrees higher we find on the MSD controller rather than using the Holley HP management system on the EFI stuff. So important to note, but run in this manner, our cammed 4.8 liter produced 440.4 horsepower all the way out here at 7,000 RPM, and peak torque checked in at 354 foot-pounds here at 5,300 RPM. You could see it was over 350 foot-pounds from 4,900 all the way to 5,700. So, you know, it's wiggling around a couple foot-pounds there. But here's what happened when we installed our nitrous setup. You can see, as we've come to expect, very big power gains from nitrous, very easy, just push the button and away you go. This was a Sniper plate setup, and we'll tell you what's going on. NOS Sniper plate nitrous, we ran 53 nitrous jets and 42 fuel jets. We did retard the timing 4 degrees. We ran this on pump gas, just 91. And since we run the motor a little colder than you do, we ran it about 140 degrees, which is going to be colder than you're going to see like on the street or at the strip. But we do that primarily. We don't have to worry about detonation at all. But on the 91 octane, which is not great for the stuff that we have in California. But you can see we picked up a lot of power. The peak power jumped up from 440 horsepower and 355 foot-pounds up to 554 horsepower and 501 foot-pounds. So big jump in torque, big jump in power. The nitrous carried power all the way through, even with our retarded timing. And actually, there's a little bit maybe more power we could be had with this thing, especially out at the top. It was down, the air fuel was down in the 11.3 range, so maybe a little bit more wiggling, either going up in nitrous jet, which always adds power, or going down in fuel jet. We could have done both of those, but nitrous on a 4.8 obviously works pretty well. Let's find out about some boost. Okay, let's take a look at our next power adder combination that we applied to the 4.8 liter. This time it's coming from a VORTECH TI trim centrifugal supercharger. And we had a 4.8 liter. It's the combination that we've used many times. It has the only upgrade to the short block was a set of 7cc, very small dome JE Forged pistons. It had a stock block, stock crank, stock rods. They were Gen 4 rods. And we did a piston upgrade because we had heard a piston way back early in its life. This one had TrickFlow 205 heads on it. It had a Brian Tooley Racing Stage 1 blower cam, which was a 610 586 lift split. a 223, 238 degree duration split at 120 degree lobe separation angle. This was basically a stage 1 positive displacement blower cam, not really designed for the centrifugal blower, but the thing that it did do, because these positive displacement blower cams tend to want to make power at higher engine speeds, that also benefits the centrifugal. If you can keep running more RPM, then you make more boost and you make more power with it. So we ran an ATI damper, 7.5 inches, and then we ran, where's our pulley size on here? Then we ran a 3.8 inch blower pulley on this combination. We equipped this thing with an Edelbrock RPM air or RPM intake manifold, a dual plane intake manifold, and then we ran on the NA combination, we ran a 750 Holley on it, and then when we added boost to it, we ran the 850 CSU blow-through carburetor, because that's the blow-through carburetor we had, and all that worked out fairly well. So we ran this thing first naturally aspirated before installing the blower, and this thing made 440.2 horsepower out here at 7,000 RPM, and 352 foot-pounds at 5,800 RPM. So making power, fairly high RPM, which is typical. That's a good enough camshaft. And again, the wide LSA positive displacement blower cam kind of pushing power out there farther. Here's what happened when we added our VORTECH. You can see I'll go ahead and move myself over here, but you can see as I look over here, look that way, we have the power curve from the VORTECH. We have a rising boost curve. It started out at 4.3 pounds down here at 3,500 RPM, down in this area down here, and then rose to a peak of 15.8 pounds out here at 6,900 RPM. You can see it was still climbing, which is kind of typical of centrifugal blower stuff. So it made 799 point something horsepower, so it's an 800 horsepower combination, and then made peak torque of 598 foot-pounds of torque. So we were kind of just at the peak torque when we shut this thing off at 7,000 RPM. There was obviously more left. But again, dual plane intake manifold did fairly well. Blow through carburetor. The VORTECH TI trim had more power. We also ran an air to water intercooler on this before the blow through carburetor. And then obviously we got extra charge cooling from the carburetor. This was run on a combination of pump gas and 100 octane. 91 plus 100. So it did very well. Good combination. But now let's find out what happens when we add a turbo. Naturally, no discussion about power adders on a 4.8 liter would be complete without a discussion about turbos, and that's exactly what we did. So we have our 4.8 liter. This one had the JE pistons, otherwise stock block, crank, and rods, had the Gen 4 stuff. This time we had stock 706 heads on it, but with valve spring upgrade because we had a Brian Tooley camshaft in it. This one was a stage 2 turbo cam, which was a 605 598 lift split, a 226 231 degree duration split, and 113 degree lobe separation angle. Honestly, I probably would pick a smaller cam if I was using this, to drive it on the street. But that's the cam we used for the test. We had the truck intake manifold and throttle body. We ran it NA with 1 7/8 headers. We had the Snake Eater 150-pound injector, so we had way more than our 1,500 cc injectors. So we had way more injector than we needed, and then later on we would run this thing with E85 and at higher power levels. So we ran this combination NA, and it produced 414 horsepower and 365 foot-pounds of torque. And to give you an idea, I can show you kind of what a bone stock 4.8 does. 325 to 330 horsepower, 330 to 340 foot-pounds of torque. And so this combination made a lot more power, but most of the gains would be, kind of past 4,500 RPM. Which would be expected of a cam like that. But what we did on this is add a single turbo to it. In this case, this was a Summit Racing S475. Let's see here. Yeah, this is an S475 with an air-to-water intercooler on it. We ran 21 degrees of timing. And we ran E85 on this thing. So we ran this thing, and with 9 pounds of boost, roughly, it made 622 horsepower and 534 foot-pounds of torque. The boost started out at 7 pounds and rose to 9.4 pounds. So we had a slightly rising boost curve. We did not have an electronic controller on this. We only had the little, manual adjuster, the little bleed valve. But we did turn the boost up on this thing. 11 pounds. And then 13 pounds. So at 11 pounds, it made 665 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds. The boost started out at 9.4 pounds, rose to 11.2. And then we turned it up again, and where it made 709 horsepower and 647 foot-pounds. And on that test, we had 10.9 pounds and rose to a peak of 12.8 pounds. So the combination did good. It shows you that turbos, turbos are kind of magical. We can make lots of power. This thing had an S475, like I said, the Summit Racing one. It had an air to water intercooler. We had E85 on it. We were running dyno water through it. So it all worked fairly well. We ran this thing at 20 degrees of timing, fairly conservative on the timing, but there was certainly more power to be had left. The T6 S475 from Summit is certainly a 1,000 horsepower deal. If we wanted to keep going up and boost, we could. And there you have it. Turbos and 4.8 liters, kind of a match made in heaven. All the power adders work on a 4.8 or 5.360, all of them. And that's what we're trying to show you here in these videos. I'm Richard Holder. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. And I'll keep testing.